This is the very first time I am building floating shelves, and I wanted to find a way to build them so that they are simple and easy enough for beginners to build, but are also heavy duty. I am going to be putting them right here in my garage to replace that flimsy plastic shelf, but you can put them in any room in your home as well. In fact, we will put it to the ultimate test. I will go sit on it and we'll see how it works. Stay tuned. So step one for me was to clean up that corner, but you don't need to see that. So step one is to find the studs in the wall where you want to put the shelves. For me, it's a lot easier because these are actually wood panels that we recently replaced, and while we were doing that, we marked exactly where the studs were. But if you wanted to find the studs, you could use a stud finder or use a long nail to try to tap it into the wall. If it goes through, there's no stud, but if it doesn't, then you know you've hit a stud. So first things first, find those studs. You want at least 2 studs per shelf. I measured and marked the height I wanted the shelf at and used a level to mark the straight line. I opted for a floating shelf because I wanted to have some space on both sides of it to be able to keep longer items. I determined how long and deep I wanted the shelf, and I decided to make the shelf 38 inches long and 16 inches deep. Then I went over to my miter saw and made cuts in 2x4 board. Now you could also use 2x3 boards and your shelves will be thinner, but I had just enough 2x4 scraps to build this shelf, so I used those. So I've got all my boards cut out for one shelf. This is the 38 inches for the back, and then we've got our supports, 16 inches. So we're gonna have one support each on each of the ends, and then we're going to have a support in the middle about a foot apart from each other. You want to make sure that you have enough space to add your screw that needs to go into the studs. Now to attach these together, we are using the 4-inch rugged structural screws by GRK. These screws are super strong. They're a great alternative to lag bolts, and the 6-point star drive makes it a no strip. The special thread design pulls the boards together, and the washer head makes for no gap joining of the boards. The best part is that the tip is self-tapping and it is self-countersinking, which makes it absolutely perfect for our project. Before attaching, I used my speed square to make sure that the boards were perpendicular, and I drew a line across the boards to mark the location for the screws. Then I went ahead and used my impact driver to add the screws. They go in easily and quickly and countersink well. Even though with one screw the joint feels super strong, you should always add 2 screws because one screw can be a pivot point. And that's the frame for the shelf. Now, for the box around the frame, I cut plywood to size to wrap the entire frame and laid it out. Again, you could use 1x boards if you like, based on the depth of your shelf. My shelf was very deep, and since it was in the garage, I really didn't want to spend a lot on nicer boards. To attach the boards, I am using the paslode 16 gauge angled finished nailer. It's a cordless nailer and uses a battery and a fuel cell. For this project, I am using 1¼ inch finished nails. The fuel cell loads at the back of the nailer, and that is what powers the nails. I loaded the nails and inserted the battery. I love that the battery also works as an on and off switch. And then just nail the plywood together. Be sure not to nail the plywood to the frame by accident. I did apply wood glue as well, but I forgot to hit record when I did that. Once the box was all nailed together, I slid the frame out of the box. It is now time to install it. This is where things get a little bit tough. Balancing the frame on the wall and aligning it level was a bit of a juggle to do alone. Another pair of hands would have been great, but about 10 minutes of struggling later, which I obviously cut out of here, I used my body to hold it in place and added the first screw. After that, it was pretty straightforward to make sure that the frame was level and add the other screws directly into the studs. You want to add 2 screws per stud. That is it. I slid the box onto the frame, and now for that test I promised. Just needed a little more headroom, I think, but it's not bad. I put my toolbox on it and a few other items to help organize the rest of the garage. Want to make floating shelves a little more fancier? Take a look at this floating ladder shelf. Or you might like this simple display shelf. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out any future projects.